Reiner.
Welcome back to another edition of the FutureProof Advisor podcast. Today, I want to explore why we're waiting for perfect when we should be shipping imperfect. And for a perfectionist, this one's a little bit difficult for me. So I want to explore it with you because it's challenging for me. And even for the non-perfectionists out there, there's always just that slight tinge of perfectionism in all of us. 8 years ago, maybe 9 years ago now, I really wanted to get back into reading. Reading was something I loved as a kid, and I really wanted to get back into it as an adult. I had let my business kind of take over my time from being able to read, and I really wanted to get back into it. And I was really excited about gaining insights, knowledge, and just like the act of reading. I just love consuming. I mean, as I've talked about on the pod before, reading, although you don't retain as much, it provides this high that is so nice to feel that you're like doing something. And so I wanted to feel that again. I knew it wasn't going to get me everywhere, but I was so excited, but I ended up not reading anything for an entire month. I spent an entire month trying to figure out how could I capture all of these insights. Like I didn't want to lose a thing. I wanted to have all of it. And I wanted to have all the data so that I could use it in the future and store it in the right way. So I was like trying to analyze how to organize my highlights and whether I should use a real book or a Kindle. And then how do I connect the Kindle highlights to a database? And then how do I, if I use a real book, how do I get that into the database? And then how do I structure the database so that I can easily, pull in and take in the insights when I need them relative to what I'm thinking about or talking about? It was crazy. I mean, that's sometimes what happens in my head. So now you just got a little glimpse of what goes in my head. But I was trying to build this perfect capture system, and it kept me from actually acting, actually reading, actually just starting to learn. And I spent all this time analyzing like the highlighting tools and the no organizing systems, and I stressed over every variable, and I did this week after week. And I remember just getting frustrated. I was like, what am I doing? I don't know, I'm not making any progress. So I just picked up a book and I started reading. And I like physical books. I just like the feel of physical books and the ability to highlight and write in the sides and everything of that nature. And I just started reading. And I just had this one app, Readwise, to take pictures of the highlights. And I just started adding them there. And my system evolved. It started to get better. But I just learned by doing. I took action. I could have kept planning and analyzing, and I would have kept buying books and never reading them. But I decided just to pick up a book, start reading it, start highlighting it, and say, you know what? I may lose some data. I may not have the perfect system, but I really just want to start learning right now. And I want to start reading. And yeah, I lost data along the way. I didn't capture everything. I didn't combine and connect the dots, as I say, like create constellations of knowledge. I always say that, information and knowledge is just stars in the sky, but, real insight and wisdom is the constellations connecting those pieces of knowledge. And I probably missed some. And, the thing is that many of us out there, many of you all have probably done this too. We've waited for like the right time. Waited for the right time to buy a house, waited for the right time to adopt a new technology in our firm, waited for the right CRM or the right AI tool, or waited for the right moment to get into AI. Or we'd go to a conference and we just wait a little bit longer until it was right for us. And then we'd, wait. And then 3 months later, we'd be still waiting. And 5 months later, we'd still be waiting. And then we just don't get anything done. And that's really the ethos of this podcast. It really aligns a little bit with some past podcasts as well. It's like we've just got to get going. We've got to learn by doing. That is what I've said is my professional mantra, is learn by doing. That's why I've started to do so much with AI, and I've started to share it with you all as a community, is because the best way for me to learn is by doing. That doesn't mean I don't read. I still read. I love to read. I still consume newsletters. I still listen to podcasts. I still go to conferences, but I try to take something from there and I learn by doing, implementing it, sharing it, teaching it, whatever it may be. It's one of the reasons I love doing my newsletter on a weekly basis. I love doing this podcast is because as much as it is for you, it's for me as well. It's selfish. It's me seeing if I can teach new concepts to an audience. Can I make and distill new concepts in a way that others understand it and can act on it? And if I can, then I'm going to retain it a little bit better, and I'm also going to empower others as well. And that's the whole point of it. So the first area of why we are stuck is that Perfectionism creates paralysis. And in a world of uncertainty, perfectionists don't ship. Ship, meaning do. Get things out there. Try things, that stuff. Research shows that, perfectionism increases paralysis, cognition, and action, especially when there is uncertainty. Especially when there's uncertainty. And 85% of business leaders, they report having decision distress. I mean, this all makes sense. Like, those are the data points and the stats and the lines and the quotes from the research, but it all makes sense. In a world that is uncertain, a perfectionist struggles. A perfectionist is looking for the right answer. The perfectionist is looking for the clear, safe route. Not necessarily safe, but the answer that is right. Perfectionism equals right. Perfectionists don't like to be wrong. The reality is that we are wrong at times. We make decisions that aren't correct. But that doesn't mean that we fail. That doesn't mean that yes, we may have made a decision that didn't have the outcome that we desired, but in every decision that we make, there's something that we learned. And as advisors, we live in a world, in an industry of complete uncertainty. There could be a headline tomorrow that throws our whole business into flux in terms of understanding how our investment philosophy works, or our planning strategy works, or how we have to run and manage our individual business. And so every day there is uncertainty. And so as a perfectionist, and I will raise my hand, this is me talking to me, and you are just here listening along the way. As a perfectionist, in that type of world, I've got to gather more information. I've got to continue to analyze. I've got to continue to get myself comfortable. And the moment something changes, I get frustrated because now I have to restart the engine and start again. And then something else changes and I have to start again. And that start again is research, analyze, get it comfortable, get an understanding, and I just keep doing this. Analyzing, planning, reanalyzing, planning, analyzing, reanalyze, etc. And I never actually get to do. And so I had to stop that. And that's what that happens with all of us. And I think that it's because we are worried about making a decision that is wrong. And so whether you're a perfectionist or not, I think we all go through this tendency because we're worried about making that wrong decision. And so we are just delaying, not because we are actually doing a justice to ourselves, we're doing an injustice because we aren't taking action. We're protecting ourselves from failure as opposed to going and learning and doing. And the thing is that there's this like emotional investment problem. And again, this is me talking to me here, and you're along for the ride. I'm happy you're here. This is a therapy session for me because this whole podcast is about a lot of lessons that I learned. This emotional investment problem that we have. It's sunk cost fallacy, which is the idea that it's hard for us to let go of something where we've spent a lot of money. We say, well, we've already spent $150,000 on this technology. We've got to continue spending that money. We've got to keep going to make this work because we've already invested a lot, as opposed to saying we're going to quit, because if we quit, we know we lost that money and there's no ability to earn it back in our minds. And so we keep going. But this emotional investment problem is something different. When we go work on something like an idea or a product or a new business line, we're doing it. We sometimes do it in isolation. And we work, we go through all this. We learn by doing, we learn. We're not necessarily sharing with everybody because it's not fully done yet. But then we go share with people, and then they're like, what is this? Like, you forgot about this and that and this and that. And then we get defensive. At least I do. Like, no, like, this is not. And then you get defensive because you've invested so much time, effort, and thought into this that other people saying it's not good means that your idea was bad. And so what happens is that we just stop, right? We just stop. You bring it to the world and they say, what the hell is this? And you start to get defensive and you just stop. And so we get stuck, right? We get stuck because we say, well, they don't like it, so then it's wrong. But in reality, what they're telling you is just feedback that maybe you should have just given them a little bit more exposure to it earlier. Not try to be perfect, because we are working. The reason that we get stuck in isolation is we're working to try to create this perfect idea, this perfect solution, because we can't bring anything imperfect to this world. That's a shame. It's something that I've been working my entire last 20 years on to help me grow as a person, as a husband, as a father, as a business owner, everything. as an advisor, because that is the detriment, the thought process that we can't bring anything imperfect to the world. And there's all these like, well, but Matt, like we're in this industry and such. And I hear you on that, but it's not necessarily the right way to think. Because if we were all perfect, then all of our clients would have perfect returns all the time. We would never lose a family, lose a client. We would close every single client that we have. We would never make a wrong decision on an investment or a wrong planning decision. We would be perfect, but we're not. None of us are. And we're trained, though, to be right. We are fiduciaries. We have a responsibility to our clients that we serve. And so we feel that this every action has to be perfect, but it doesn't. If we act without all the information, we feel like we're risking the business. Yes, Amazon and Google and Meta and all of them can do that. They're not dealing with humans' life savings. We cannot. I think there's a lot of relevancy and in credibility to that statement. But I don't think it's black or white. And the challenge that we have is that in a world where everybody has access to ChatGPT and everybody has access to Claude and Perplexity and Gemini and all these things, what is our differentiator? The differentiator is differentiated knowledge that is not easily accessible by everybody. And when the LLM has access to everything that's publicly available, the only way to get unique, differentiated information and knowledge is by doing, is by starting, is by taking an action and learning an insight through that action that only people that took that action in that specific time at that specific moment would have. And that's then how we can use that insight, pair it with the insight of the world to now create a unique, differentiated view on how to progress forward. And that's what this is all about. Learning by doing, not by sitting in front of an LLM. Even though I do a lot, but I do learn by doing because I learn that information. And you have to remember, by hearing people tell you and what they're learning by doing, we're only retaining a little bit of it, and you don't really realize all of the small little building blocks that they learned through that process. They only share the outcome of what they learned, not the lessons that led them to that outcome. And if they share some, they may share some of the highlight ones, but there's all these small little ones, building blocks that are really helpful. And so transition into this, what I'm realizing about action is that you learn more than you ever will through acting. That's the truth. That's just the straight up truth, right? Eric Ries, who had this concept called the lean startup, and he built this framework, the lean startup framework. I remember really reading it when I was building our technology business, because it was mainly built for technology, because there was all this idea of minimum viable product. And the minimum viable product in the tech world, I'm just going to get a little techie with you for a second, is that how do I build the simplest version of my idea as a product that allows me to test and gain insight? So how do I have get maximum insight with minimum effort? So it's basically like, how do I get a smoke and mirrors product that I can test and get maximum insight? So maybe it could be a landing page, or maybe it could be like a clickable prototype, or it could be just like a really dumbed down version. Now in the world today, it could be a vibe coded version. And I can test that with like 10 people and get maximum insight with minimum investment. And that's a lesson that we can learn as advisors, as future-proof advisors. Not all advisors are going to do this, but future-proof advisors definitely will. It's the idea that how do I take the smallest version of my idea that will help me create some learnings? The idea could be, I'm really wrestling with this idea of like changing my fee structure. Okay, great. Why don't you, instead of going and changing your ADV and changing all of your fees and then not being able, making it really hard to overcome that, even though you could overcome it if you need to, go and just create a landing page and test it out. Advertise to it, see how many people sign up, and then advertise towards your current fee structure and see what the differences are and compare them. That'll give you some insight. Minimum investment, maximum insight, right? It's this idea of the build, measure, learn loop. Turn ideas into actual services or products. Measure the impact, how they respond, and then learn whether to change the idea, to persevere through and continue to build on it, or to quit it. It makes it easier to quit when you haven't invested so much time. Like when I was talking about sitting in isolation, and building out this whole idea and then presenting it after spending hours and weeks and days with it. This allows it smaller. It's less so that you can continue going, because, if you spend an hour and someone says it's not good, but they give you some really good insight that you can go try again, like you're going to go try again. But if you spend 5 months or 3 months or a month or a week and they say it's not good, it's like, gosh, I got to go do this all I go again. It's like a lot. And so I just stop. And so cycle through as many ideas as possible and get as much information. It's the 70% rule. We talked about this on a recent pod. Colin Powell's talked about it. Jeff Bezos has talked about it. Most decisions should be made with 70% of info you wish you had. If you're waiting for 90, you're waiting too long. And you know what? When I say that, because I am an advisor, it makes me cringe a little bit. It's hard to hear that. It's terrifying, to be honest, because we're dealing with individuals' life savings. And Matt, you're telling me to make a decision with 70% information. But the reality is, to get to 90% confidence means there's only a 1 in 10 chance that you're wrong. It's going to take a really long time. And that long time means by the time you get there, you probably missed another 3 or 4 opportunities. And if you allocate your portfolio the right way and you make that decision and you're not putting all of your clients' money into something, or you make a planning decision or a technology decision for your business, you're able to make those back. You're able to create protection around you that allows you to make those decisions and move and continue to make more decisions. But the beauty of it is that you learn through those decisions. And that learning is where the value is. That's where the juice is. And it doesn't mean that we need to risk client money. It doesn't mean that. I mean, the reality is that it's hard to believe that every advisor makes every investment decision with 90+% information of clarity on that. They have 70% of the insight probably. And they make that decision. They have a gut, they have experience and everything of that nature, but 90% confidence is really high. That means that your portfolio, you have 90% winners and only 10% losers in the history of being an advisor. And that's really hard, but it doesn't have to be with investing. You can test marketing with your own budget. You can test marketing in a small budget, an A/B test. You could test an investment philosophy with your own money. You could get a handful of clients to test a new idea for whether it's planning or investment thesis, etc. Get consent, let them know what you're doing, why you're doing it, what it could mean, what the risks are, and see what they say. And I will tell you that I'm sure there's some clients that would be like, yes, I would love that. I'd love to try something new. This is refreshing. This is exciting. And I know I'm not risking everything, but I'm a part of something new. That's exciting. But you give them consent. They sign off on it. You tell them the risks. You have a paper trail. That's something that's really there. It's not black or white. It's not binary. It's not yes or no, either or. It's both. We can be stewards and fiduciaries of our clients while also trying new things. Because if we're not trying new things, that could become harmful to our business and to our clients over time. And if we allow ourselves to see this gray zone and take time and intention to go and explore new ways and see new opportunities to explore new ways, there are. And you can learn by looking outside of our industry. That's how I've learned a lot. By learning from these technology companies, by spending time in the technology world, by talking to people in businesses outside of ours. You gain something from that. And then you say, how do I apply that into this business? And then I go apply it. That's the learn by doing. All right, the final area is like this framework for how do we ship more? That's SHIP. How do we ship more? How do we get more ideas out there? Because not all the ideas are good, so we've overcome our perfectionism. We're okay with failing, right? We understand this experimental mindset. We understand this idea. Now, what's the framework for shipping? And I want to use just an example before we get into this. I want to use the example of Dropbox. So Dropbox, we know, is this file management system. Drew Houston was the CEO. And this goes back to a little bit of our point from earlier. Drew Houston had a technically complex product idea. He wanted to get cross-platform file sync. What that means is the ability for your files to sync between different platforms, meaning your computer is a platform, your phone's a platform, etc. That's really easy to think about now, but at the early stages was really hard to do. It's a complex problem. And so Drew could have spent all of his time as an entrepreneur and a founder of this business going and solving that problem. And he could have done what we talked about earlier, go into isolation, solve the problem, come out, and people be like, that's not the problem I need. And at this point in time, when he had this idea and this concept of what he needed to solve, there's 5,000 people on an email wait list for this product, for Dropbox. So what he did is he created a smoke and mirrors example, video of this. Created it on the landing page, see how it turned out. Within hours, the wait list went from 5,000 to 75,000. And he knew he had an idea. He knew now it was worth the time to go solve this problem. And so he went and solved it, and the rest is history with Dropbox. That's the idea of learn by doing. That's the idea of the minimum version. You don't need the full version. This is something that I've struggled with a lot in my life. It probably held me back a little bit building technology, and it's held me back a little bit inside the wealth management business as well, and something I'm super cognizant of. Is this idea that I can't deliver something that's not fully baked and built out, doesn't have all the feature sets. I felt that like our technology, when we were building our technology business, had to integrate with everybody. Or we were going to lose some clients and we were going to generate revenue and then we wouldn't get a shot with them again. Or if we only had a few certain elements, they wouldn't pay the price for it. And so they would say no. And we really needed those clients. So we needed to get all the features in there. And that spread our tech team really thin. And so you just need a simple version. And it's hard to think about, but you've got to do that. Like you don't need, if you want to test your own client portal, now that you can vibe code maybe, you can go test your own client portal. But it maybe only has like the ability to upload, files to it. And you use like a box link or a Dropbox link or whatever. Or you really want to start a newsletter. You want to try a different newsletter. Well, don't spend time like figuring out the structure and writing a 2,000 word newsletter. Just go and get like the idea and put 4 bullet points in and send it out to like 10 clients and see what happens. That's a minimum idea. Just get something simple to start with and learn from that. And then see what actually happens. Like, do those people respond to that email? Follow up with them. How did you like this email? How many people opened it? Follow up with the people that opened it. Did you like this content? What did you not like about it? And then try it again the next time. Nobody is keeping score of everything that you're doing. I'll tell you that. As much as we think that they are, the reality is that they're not. They are not keeping score of everything that you're doing. And so the reality is that they see it, they forget about it. Because as we talked about the forgetting curve, you forget about things after 2 weeks. Within an hour, you forget most of what you just learned. So they're not remembering it. Nobody's keeping score of like, oh, well, Matt sent me an email with these 4 bullet points this time, so I'm expecting an email of these next 4 bullet points the next time. That's not what's happening. You send another email, a different one, and you see what the open rate is, and you follow up with them again. Probably different people open it. The other people open it. They're like, wow, this looks kind of different, but like, what did the other one look like? Maybe you have one client that's like really keeping track because they're retired and they're an engineer and they're just really focused on it. But the reality is that nobody's really keeping track. But the ability is that you now get these insights that you can iterate on. And you've got to just be comfortable iterating on some of those things that are low risk factors, low risk things, but that could have high impact value to your business. And then you improve things based on this feedback. You talk to them, you learn about it, look at the data, you learn from it, you test it again, you try a new subject line or a new headline, whatever it may be. And then only after you learned do you then continue to scale it. That's the process. It takes time. It takes intentional effort. But you're making small little bets, learning on small bets that aren't wasting a lot of your time. But at the end, when you figure it all out, you've compounded a lot of time. But you've done it over small iterative areas and you've learned in every step of there. It's like you don't need to look for the big win. Just get small wins. Small little wins build up. If I had a baseball team and every hitter got singles, that'd be great. I'd rather have a lot of people making singles than one guy that hits home runs and everybody else that strikes out. Singles, I just want a single. It adds up. I get a lot of runs. It's the same thing here. And if you're not a baseball fan, you just want to continue to stack your coins. If you get a penny every time, 1 penny is not a lot, but if you keep stacking them up, you're going to have a lot of money. That's what the idea is. And let them build over time. We talk about this in our business, about compounding. Just save a little bit. It's the same thing here. Just learn a little bit. Let it compound. Let all those learnings compound. Reid Hoffman, who founded LinkedIn, he said, if you're not embarrassed by the first version, you launch too late. I mean, think about this. The technology that we use now, like think about the early Apple, the early Google, the early days Facebook, like those were all like we look back on like, that's so silly, but they had to launch it then. They had to launch it. They launched it. And it got iteratively better because they did launch. If they continued to sit and wait for it to be the right version and really elegantly designed and had all the features, they never would have launched. It got progressively better. It's better today than it was 10 years ago because it was out there in the market and it was learning by feedback. It had a seat at the table. It was playing the game. If we're just sitting there analyzing and playing, and we're not playing the game. You got to play the game to learn. And so, if I circle back to the example I talked about earlier about my reading situation and figuring out my reading system, my reading situation, my reading system, today, 8 years later, it's better than I ever envisioned it could be. I have better insights. I'm able to take on those insights. I'm able to connect those insights. And it didn't come from that month of planning. Actually, everything that I planned in that month, I haven't done any of it. What it came from was just doing, was learning through action, learning through doing. I learned by reading. I read. I took some things that I read and put them into action, but I just started. And as I started, I figured out how my lifestyle was, because when I sat there planning, what I was doing was I was sitting there thinking about how was the world going to be with me being able to read. Like, how much time was I going to have? Okay, I was going to have 30 minutes, but that was before I had kids. I don't have as much time as I used to. And so I built out the perfect system, but then life happens. Business gets busy, life happens, whatever it may be. And so you have to just learn by just going and starting and doing it. And I may have, lost some data from the books I read in the past. I may not have those anymore. I may not have the highlights anymore, whatever it may be. But the system I have today has evolved and molded to the way that I am today. And the only way that happened was because I was doing it. I incorporated it into how I was. And every idea that we have, everything that we want to improve in our business, is not going to improve by us just having a plan or having the idea. We have to be intentional and incorporate it into the way that we work. That means that we have to create, a day where we can go and do this a week, or a couple hours in a week where we can focus on it. And then we have to start using it within our life. And that means that we have to change. Change is so hard. I mean, we've talked about this often, and it's just so hard. We ask our clients to change, their habits to meet their financial plan. But we have struggles because we're humans. Our clients and us are just humans, and we all struggle with change. And so when you have a new idea that you need to incorporate, you need to change, your schedule or your routine or whatever it may be, and it's very difficult. But the thing is that the beauty of this world, it's a kind of a conundrum right now where we are today, is that AI provides us all of us, information that we can access, all the same information. AI will give us the information. It won't create the next new thing. It will give us the information. Well, then the conundrum gets to is how do we differentiate ourselves? And that's where the beauty is that AI can help us create a first version, a 0.1 version of an idea. And then that's the opportunity. That's the opportunity to take that action and go learn some information that the LLM doesn't have, because the LLM's not taking the action. We are in our own environment with our own perspective and our own knowledge, our own experiences, our own judgment, our own attention, and we're learning something different. And that starts how we start stacking up those pennies of learnings, and they start to compound. And that's how we differentiate ourselves in a world of AI. That's how we get the benefits of AI while differentiating in the world of AI, is by learning by doing. And if you don't force yourself to launch, you're never going to launch. You've got to just say, hey, I'm going to learn for 2 days, and on the third day, I'm going to try something. So when you think about this, it's don't think about launching something big or getting that big swing. What's the smallest version of progress that creates learning for you? What can you do today? What can you ship this week? What's one thing that you could ship this week? If we can do that, and we can do that every week, you may not see the benefits of it after 1 week, maybe not after 2 weeks, maybe not after 3 weeks, but that start to add up, and you'll start to be thank goodness I did that. Thank goodness I took that action. And you'll start to see separation between you and peers and everything else. So with that, I say thanks. Thank you Thank you for spending some time with me today. Remember, like the episode in your podcast app. Leave a comment, share it with a friend, try to teach it to a friend. But let's keep building this community together. This is I'm so fantastic community of individuals. Let's continue to build it together, and let's go out there and be part of the change that betters our industry. So stay well, be well, and keep on exploring.